great to have you here on our SolarWinds Service Desk and Orion integration product session in the product breakout room.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Liz.
Absolutely. So again, everybody, my name is Liz Beavers. I am a head geek here at SolarWinds Service Desk. And previously, I got to work on SolarWinds Service Desk with our prospects and clients, working to find some of those different outlets that they could leverage for potential solutions. Jason, I'll kick things off to you for a quick introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Hey, everyone. I'm Jason Yuri. I am a senior sales engineer here at SolarWinds. And I really work with a number of teams and organizations, helping them with their service and asset management strategies as it comes to SolarWinds Service Desk.
Great stuff. So I think now more than ever, especially amid the pandemic, it's been very clear that we need to have IT aligned with common goals. And I think that this is especially true for IT service delivery, given the effect that it has on everyone in the organization.
Yeah, that's very true. And
so
if you're if you're using the SolarWinds Service Desk platform, you've probably noticed that we've put a emphasis on the integrations with the other SolarWinds products, and we're going to focus in on the integration with the Orion Platform today.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm really excited about what this session has to offer as well, because it really gets to the heart of how the service desk can play a larger role in IT operations.
Yep, agreed. And I think we want to, the goal here really is to start to eliminate silos between different parts of your organization and give some more visibility into those types of things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Jason. So with that, let's go ahead and talk just a little bit about some of the potential value that simply bringing your operations, your alerting platform, and integrating that into your service desk, what that might look like before we even jump into the mechanics behind this integration. Because I think that's a really important discussion for all of us to be keeping top of mind.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is that service desk and your networking team, your help desk versus networking team has kind of been, again, those silos, different groups. And there isn't always the known issues that networking might be dealing with. The service desk is not aware of those things. And so obviously you have a platform that's giving alerts. It's doing a lot of the work that is needed for the networking group. Well, we need to get the help desk group or the service desk group really involved in that as well, as much as we possibly can. And this is a great way in order to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on that point as well, I know we were talking about the elimination of silos, as traditionally we do have different folks that are managing alerts and configuring what those alerts might look like, as opposed to who your service desk technicians are, who are actually providing that frontline support to the user, like myself saying, I can't hear my headset. So with that, beyond this elimination of silo, we also have this incredible opportunity for heightened visibility. And a lot of this I know we're going to dig into here shortly with an actual demonstration between these two platforms and what that integration looks like. But when I think of the value, it really is visibility that's stepping up to the plate here, because now I'm not having to work between two disparate systems. Having an integration between what's happening on the operations and my alerting side, what's the health of some of the nodes within my environment, that data can be instantaneously fed into my service desk. Then that way, as a technician, I'm not going to be shocked, I should say, if I begin to get plagued with a number of users beginning to report incidents about them having an issue accessing their VPN, or things of that nature. So I think visibility is another one of those key pillars of value to bringing these two items together.
Yeah, and I would also kind of relate it a little bit to some of those ITIL methodology of like the problem management or major incident management even. You're starting to see those things come in. Those alerts are kicking off in another system. You're integrating it to your service desk and being able to link things together, get the people that are having issues the help that they need as quickly as possible. So not only are you seeing the things, visually, you're aware of the issues that are happening. You're maybe even able to resolve things for your users before they even notice that they're having an issue. So.
Yeah, and I think that that's an incredible story to tell, especially on the heels of our last session of all things ITIL in the service desk. Having that space to not only receive the incoming alert, be able to take those service management oriented operations and motions to address the end user who's having that reported issue that's affiliated to the alert that came through. But then, as you mentioned, taking it one step further with problems and changes from, as Sean was mentioning, documentation purposes. All of that really comes full circle by having these two pieces work together. The other thing that I'll say too, and I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this, Jason, is, and especially from your experience in the teams that you've been working with, is I think when we talk integrations, there's such an opportunity for an organization of any size, of any experience. So with some of the teams that you've worked with in the past, I think that, again, we've probably seen it in a lot of different verticals and a lot of different sizes in play.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a small service desk of, one or two people, or you're a very large organization. You always can benefit from having visibility into other parts of the organization, other silos, as we called it, for IT in general. And just in my personal experience, I mean, I ran a service desk for about 10 years prior to coming here with SolarWinds. And I've seen this firsthand where I have networking guys that know about an issue. I'm getting an influx of tickets from our users not able to connect to a wireless or something like that. The networking guys know about it, but I haven't been made aware of it yet. So I'm like, I've got technicians working on things that they don't even have the full picture yet. So having that full picture in any way possible, whatever information we can gather as part of this is important. But again, that was a mid-size business, but small businesses, we see this all the time. Even more so maybe in small businesses that really need some to tie things in together. But yeah, we see it across all sizes of organizations.
I love hearing about your previous life because I know you have so many good nuggets of information from what you saw firsthand. And with that too, I think that that's a really good hurdle to bring to the table. I think so much behind this conversation, we've talked value, we've talked about some of the opportunity and the possibilities, what could be made available by bringing these two together. But I also think that it's really important to kind of identify what are some of those pain points or what are some of those challenges that teams might be facing that might then help them bring this into the fold of what their operations look like. And I think, Jason, you hit the nail on the head with one of those hurdles being there's a lack of communication between those two teams, which could certainly make some other internal practices and processes a bit more challenging. What would you say are also some of the other considerations that teams should have at the forefront when they might not have considered bringing these two items together, or when they're looking to start integrating things between monitoring, alerting, and the service desk?
Yeah, and we've touched on a lot of those already. Obviously communication is key, especially in the world that we live in now. You never know what's going to happen and where people are going to be and how much communication can take place between people. So I think that's obviously very important. Just cost is associated with this as well. Just having things all together into one pane of glass, if you will. That's always been important for a lot of organizations, and then reducing the amount of time spent and resources spent from a service desk standpoint. Why spend a lot of time and resources troubleshooting something if someone else already knows about it? So, and I don't know you networking guys out there, I'm not trying to pick on you, but you probably head down, you're trying to get the issue resolved for yourself, and you're not really focused on what might be coming from the end users. And that's where the service desk can really benefit from that added communication that comes into play.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jason. And I think, again, alluding to the previous session and what you guys will hear us speak about a bit further as we dive into the demonstration and the mechanics behind this integration here, is really that full circle employee experience. So not only in considering and bringing these two platforms and communications together, will your technicians and your network engineers have better visibility to be able to perform their jobs more effectively and really optimize their time, their resources, which at the end of the day is money, but you're also providing an incredible employee experience. So bringing the two together seamlessly in a centralized space, you're then going to be able to help potentially resolve issues faster. Or before that influx of tickets, as Jason had alluded to earlier, hits your service desk, on your portal, you could project an announcement making them aware that something's been identified in your environment and you're working towards that resolution, really giving you the opportunity to show up, show your support, and make sure that your users know that you're in their corner and you're doing everything you can to facilitate the diminishment of this being an issue to their day-to-day. So as we kind of wrap up a little bit of the value add, I'm a big proponent of talking through value, making sure we kind of hit on some of those different considerations as well. I think that kind of brings us into just broader considerations, Jason, about what teams, we've thought about what are the challenges that we're working to resolve, but what are some of the alerts that teams should be thinking of, or ones that they might want to initially approach that they might want to bring into this integration before we show them how they can do this?
I think that just in general, you have some alerts that you want to be made aware of immediately upon it happening. I mean, whether it's a server being down or, being overloaded in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you don't care as much about, individual workstations being overloaded, but a server hitting a certain threshold you need to know about. So just from just that general standpoint, I think we all can agree that there are general alerts that everyone is made aware of, and integrating that and making sure that Service Desk is aware of that as well is just going to be beneficial across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, once teams go through and they define those based on the expectations they have internally or based on how they want to simply run internally, speaks to actually one of the questions it looks like came up in the chat about kind of how can you set it up to alert all parties. We'll go through a little bit of that setup here in just a moment, but also keep in mind there's also going to be some different automation tactics that we can take so that there are certain priorities that we might want to escalate a bit higher based on incoming alerts. Or there might even be, to your point, Jason, maybe I don't want to know about every individual workstation. We can prevent all of those alerts from coming into the service desk so you're not feeling overwhelmed and bombarded. We certainly don't want this to be additional noise. This really is to help streamline visibility to optimize your actions moving forward. So with that, Jason, I'll kick things to you. I think we're in a good place to kind of go through and walk through some of the initial setup of how we can have SolarWinds Service Desk speak directly with the Orion platform and have some of this bi-directional communication.
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and share my screen here with you guys. Awesome. So what we're focused on right now is what you're seeing in here is the service desk. So for those of you using the service desk, you're very familiar with this type of screen. We're actually going to go into our setup menu first and foremost. And then obviously we're going into integrations, and we're going to click into the Orion Alerts integration here. Now we've got some that's already been set up here, but we're going to start from scratch. We're going to create a brand new Orion alert instance. So we're going to click on the plus button here. We just want to give this a name. I'm going to call this 135 Orion just for my own purposes here. We can give it a description, and we'll come back to the requester here in just a minute. All right.
So seems pretty straightforward so far.
Very straightforward. We just click create. Now we get in here. This is where we get into some additional functionality and where we're going to generate our token that we're going to use in the Orion platform. Before I generate the token, I do want to point out a couple other things here. Obviously, that name and description are still here. The requester, which we kind of skipped over previously, this is going to be the requester that's listed for any incident that gets created off of an Orion alert. So right now that's set to me. We might want to change that. Whoever's creating the integration, it's going to set it to them. You can certainly use that requester. In a lot of instances, what we've seen is creating a generic user for the Orion alerts so that it's not tied to an actual user within the tool. If you're not familiar with creating a user, you always have the ability to create a user from this plus button up here as an administrator. So we could create a new user, give it a name from there, or we could do it under the users and groups section here in setup. In this case, we already have something like that set up. We just called it Orion Alerts. Just again, makes things a little easier for us, just for filtering purposes to see this user. It ties it to a generic user, so it's not an actual person that we see a ton of tickets coming in for.
That's a great point, Jason. And I think it's sorry, Jason. I was just going to chime in too and say, I think that that's a really great point with the inclusion of that Orion alerts or Orion requester. We'll show you guys here in a little bit as well. Jason hinted at filtering capabilities. There are going to be some really easy filtered and managed reports that you'll be able to create custom views of and even extract from the system.
Yep. Very good point. Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that. So the next piece here is going to be to reopen the resolved or closed incidents. This is just so that if there's any incident in the system, do we want those to get reopened after we've resolved them if the alert gets re-triggered? In this case, we can set it to never do that. It'll just create a new one. Or we can say within a certain time frame, anywhere from 1 hour up to, I think it's 14 days, that we can re-trigger and reopen this alert. I'm just going to leave this for never for right now, but that's an option that you can choose when you're creating this. Now we're going to go ahead and just generate our token. That's going to give us our token that we're going to now leverage in the Orion platform. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that token, and we're going to switch tabs here over to Orion. Now here in Orion, again, if you're familiar with using the Orion suite of products, we're going to go into our settings first and foremost. So we're just going to go into all settings here. And from here, we want to manage our alert integration instances. So that's what we're doing is setting up the integration with SolarWinds Service Desk. So we're just going to add the integration instance here. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. You'll see we already have one in here, but again, we're creating this from scratch. So we're going to actually add a new instance here. Now, when we click Add Instance, we'll go ahead and select Desk.
And I was going to say too, while Jason is going in there and navigating to selecting the addition of this SolarWinds Service Desk instance to Orion, do keep in mind in our resources section, there is some additional information. I know that this is a lot of setup to walk through. It's really important to establish that connection so you can then begin taking action around these alerts. So there's some really thorough documentation just so that you guys know walking through compiling and configuring this authentication.
All right. And then once we've added this, we're going to give it a name. Again, I'm just going to use that 135, and then I'm going to call it Service Desk. And our token here, we'll go ahead and paste our token in. And then we can go ahead and test our connection here. Make sure that that connects properly. And you'll notice that gives you the URL of your Service Desk instance here as well. And then all we have to do is click Save. Now we've got that added. We'll be able to actually see status of these things. I'm actually going to click back over here to Service Desk first. I'm going to refresh my page to make sure this is connected. And I can see that I do have that connection here at the top. If I click back on the Orion alerts to see all my instances, I'll see that connection here as well. And from this page, we can refresh as well, and we should see our status change. And now we've got an up status here for that alert instance. So we've established our connection now with Service Desk. And so now it's just a matter of configuring our alerts to create those incidents in the Service Desk within our alerts section. So I'm going to hop over into alerts. And the very first thing we want to do is click on Manage Alerts. That's kind of over here on the right-hand side. And all we're going to do here is go ahead and create a new alert. Now you can, use existing alerts and set an action to create a Service Desk ticket off of that if you already have those alerts created. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and create a brand new one. And if you've ever configured Orion alerts before, you know a lot of the capabilities within here as far as triggering and what triggers the alert, and then the action is really where we're focused in on when we're creating these. I'm going to just call this Test Orion Alert. Not going to give it a description here. And I can set a severity of this as well. So again, with the alerting, anything that you want to set in here critical, I'm just going to give this as a warning alert. It doesn't really matter what we configure in here. Really, again, the meat of it is going to be in those the trigger actions that we're going to configure what it's sending over and how it's sending over to the Service Desk.
And as Jason's navigating over to that Actions tab to actually create this alert, I love here again simply how granular you can get so that this information is going to then be present in the ticket that a technician is going to be viewing. Again, pulling in that full picture visibility to what's the ticket that I'm working on that I've received this alert about. So there's no questions, hopefully, by the time it gets to the Service Desk so that they're able to more effectively and efficiently work towards a resolution.
And this alert we're going to create is just that the CPU load is greater than 85%, and it's only on servers. We don't want it triggering on anything else. Again, very basic alert here. Our reset conditions we can set here as well when it resets the this alert. We can set a time frame here as well, so you can set it to only trigger during certain hours. And we'll get into our trigger action. So this is the cool part. So adding our action, we will see an option here to create the SolarWinds Service Desk incident here. We're going to select that, and we're going to scroll down, and we're going to click Configure Action. We now can select our Service Desk instance. You'll remember I had two of them listed, so we're going to go ahead and choose that 135. We do have the ability to send which attributes are being sent as part of this alert. So if we wanted to add additional attributes in here that are being sent over, we can configure those here. Our custom attributes is what's going in as the title and description. So it's sending that name and the alert message over into the service desk for us. We can again choose time of day here as far as when those are going to happen as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and click to add this action. Go ahead and click next. We do have the reset actions in here as well. So when it gets reset, do we want to add an action here instead? We don't want to do that in this case. And then our summary. And you'll notice down here at the bottom, I do want to point this out, is that we do have 2 objects that are in this scope that will trigger based on this. So when we submit this, we will see those 2 tickets get created on the service desk side. So just something of note, if you are creating this and it happens to be a condition that is, going to create a lot of incidents, just something to be aware of when you're creating these. So now we've got that alert added in here, and we'll go ahead. That's really it as far as the alert side. On the Orion side, we've created it. The trigger action, you'll notice again, create SolarWinds Service Desk incident. So that's taking place in there. And then if we switch back over, we'll just hop into incidents here under our service desk. And we'll see those 2 Orion alerts that were triggered when we created that incident or created that alert.
So I'm also having to pull a Chris as he did earlier and make my lights turn on. But I was going to say, Jason, so now that we've done all that work in configuring and connecting these 2 items together, I love this because here's where some of the additional configuration for your technicians and your service desk team can take place. So just like you mentioned earlier in establishing that initial Orion requester, when we brought in the authentication with your token there, you can use filter capabilities to that end. We could also do incident origin as well. And then that way we can better understand even some of the volumes that our service desk has been receiving from that specific source or from that specific requester.
Right. So we have the ability, here in the, you're looking at your incident screen, you've got your table view. So we talked a little bit about this initially, but so our incident origin is the primary one, and we can say the origin of this is equal to SolarWinds Orion. So we're just selecting that and applying this to our view, and we can see all of the alerts that have taken place. One of the other things that is good to note is for alerts is the comments as well. So when an alert is re-triggered, there's going to be comments being added to the initial incident. So you're not going to get a ton of new tickets getting created. We can also indicate when it's acknowledged on the Orion side. We send that information back over as well. So you're getting that acknowledgement being displayed in here. So again, service desk side, you're aware of when something's been acknowledged from the Orion side, the networking team in this situation. Know when it's been reset on that side, if it's been re-triggered, if all those things that are taking place on the Orion side is communicated back for this particular incident, so you're able to keep track of it. And then from the Orion side, you're able to keep track of what incident was created and the status and the assignee of that ticket as well. So from the alert on the Orion side, you'll see that information as well as the link back to this service desk.
And I think that bidirectional data exchange, again, helps really fuel that visibility, that elimination of those silos. And just like we were looking at the filtered view here in the service desk, you can also on your Orion dashboard actually have a widget that's dedicated to those ongoing updates with the service desk as well. So full stream, full centralized visibility between these 2 different sources.
Yep. And I love the dashboard widget. That's something that we've added in here as the capability. If I wanted to look at all new incidents, for instance, coming in, so I'm going to look at all my new incidents. It's going to add this on here. We've got those test Orion in there, but I have filtering capabilities here as well. So just like in that incident queue, I could filter this down, and I can look for the same thing, incident origin, look for SolarWinds Orion. I'm going to update that widget. I've got all those Orion, those new Orion coming in, and I can call this, all new Orion alerts. So now I've got a brand new.
And
widget.
I love how you're able to configure that. Yeah, I love how you're able to configure that widget here too, Jason. And what's cool as well is you could even have several widgets dedicated to maybe those different Orion requesters if you had multiple in the system, and even create a custom dashboard space that's just dedicated to those alerts coming in. So really, really great functionality there. I think with our remaining time, a couple of other quick things to show, because I know we've got just a little under 10 minutes. Earlier, we had alluded to some of those other mechanisms that users would be able to perform in the service desk beyond just the intake of that initial alert coming through as an incident. So Jason had talked from his previous experience, but also what's available in the service desk itself with problems and changes. So there's certainly the ability to also affiliate those incoming alerts and even escalate them if we do have that influx of tickets to a problem. What I love with that as well is not only do you have this ease of affiliation by creating these relationships, but then from a problem management side, as we heard John speak to, you also have the opportunity, perhaps if you begin to troubleshoot this and you identify it as a known error in your environment, that can help you fuel your known error database so that you can then begin to produce content with troubleshooting information there. So really, really nice work from that problem management space. I know that you're pretty passionate about changes as well. So I think that there's also the opportunity with the incoming alerts to even perform some change enablement.
Absolutely, yeah. Linking those alerts into any of those problems and changes is important. One of the other pieces, and we haven't quite touched on this yet, and I think we have a few minutes left. I think it might be important to do this is touch on how Orion integrates as well from an asset management standpoint, which is also very important from your change management, change enablement.
Exactly. Yeah. So with those remaining 4 minutes, we'll quickly jump into that. And it even looks, Jason, we're totally in sync with what some of our users are putting out as well on that end, tying that in with one seamless CMDB. So while Jason is pulling that up, just a quick briefer on this. In addition to being able to connect your Orion platform into SolarWinds Service Desk for alerts, we're also able to bring it in from that inventory and CMDB perspective, providing that heightened visibility across your full environment based on what you've been tracking. So we talked about being able to not only affiliate things from a service management standpoint, but now we can take it one step further and actually correlate that reported alert based on data we're pulling in about those specific assets to then link the impacted asset to the recorded incident or to that recorded problem in our known error database.
Yep. And so really to get this connection established, there's a couple prerequisites to this. You do need to have the under installation discovery and assets, you do need to have a discovery scanner installed within your network. And then under the connections section, that's where you'll be able to add a connection to Orion. So within here, we would click again, plus button. Plus button is everywhere in the application. If you haven't noticed already, we're going to add the Orion discovery here. Just by clicking on that, it's very simple. We give it a name, a description. We choose our scanner that we've already had installed. And then we're going to give our IP address of our Orion instance. So, in this case, it's 10.199.70.135. I would put that in there, my username and password to authenticate to that. This username and password is only for read-only access. So you only need to provide read-only access to Orion in order to pull this stuff in. But you'll notice something else down here at the bottom is that we do also do dependency mapping. So for that CMDB, creating relationships between assets is very important for a CMDB. So dependency mapping can be done automatically from Orion. This is coming from NPM specifically. And so you can create those dependencies automatically on that. And then just to highlight real quick from an asset standpoint, obviously we're going to pull stuff into the computers section. We're going to pull things into the network devices section for that. But to go back to what Liz was referring to, when we're talking about incidents or changes or problems in the system, being able to link these assets is important. So if we were to go into a specific change here, we'll have the ability to relate to any configuration items that we have. So if we've pulled in all those Orion nodes, we've pulled in other assets within the system, we'll be able to create that link in here, select those items. It gives us a nice view really of what we have in our environment. And then again, the dependencies that we have between those. So once they've been linked to those changes, we've created relationships across the board, not only from the change, but to the asset and any other assets that might be in there.
That's awesome stuff, Jason. And I love everything that's been happening with the CMDB in particular. Not only is it super easy from your service motions to be able to make those associations across other service management projections, but that quick link to your various assets is huge. And then taking it one step further with the CMDB and those dependencies that you were mentioning, we even have that visualization component as well. So now if I need to then make a change based on what we received from Orion about alert and we linked those assets, I know what the implications of that change could be and the potential impact that could result in bringing that change to fruition. But we, I think, could probably keep going on all day about not only the benefits of this integration, but everything that you're able to do between the two sources. I know that we covered a lot, but as we round out our remaining minute or so here, Jason, what's one of the biggest takeaways that users can expect to see with this integration at play?
I mean, again, we mentioned this at the very beginning, and we'll keep saying it is the visibility for different teams and breaking down those silos between the teams. I think is the benefits of that are incalculable. You're going to see so much more, not only collaboration between the teams, but reduce the amount of resources you're spending. Again, troubleshooting things that maybe you weren't aware of an issue before previously. So lots of value there for breaking down silos and collaborating amongst IT as a whole.
Awesome. Really, really good stuff. Love learning about it. And thank you so much for your time. That was really informative. And we're so excited to be able to walk everybody through the setup so that you guys can really be getting the most out of this. Thanks again for joining, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Liz.